Hi everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and today we're going to get started on our 8.5 by 8.5 Pretty Pale Prima mini album. For the mini album, you're going to need a pack of the 12 by 12 and the A4 to complete the project. I'm going to start with an album that I already prepared so that we can get right on to adding the pages so we can get to the decorating part, the most fun part. So again, you're going to need a 12 by 12 collection from Prima and the A4. And that's if you want to do the album, if you want to copy what the design I'm using. So I already pre-made my 8.5 by 8.5, and I've got some of my interactive flaps laying in here. We're going to go ahead and get started on layering them in. And on page 1, we are going to add a flap to the outside that measures 8 by 4 3/4. So that's 8 by 4 3/4. And that's going to get it adhered directly to the outside edge of page 1. And I am quickly going to get a contrast paper so it's easy for you guys to see where I'm laying this down. So I'm going to come as close to the edge of this paper as I can. I've already pre-taped, hoping to save a little bit of time. And I'm digging for my pick tool. Here it is. So very simple flap. Most of the interactive pieces in this album are very simple, very basic. What I've done, I'm going to move the rest of these so the page will lay flat for us. What I've done to make this album interesting is lots of layering. So the flaps will be pretty basic, but there'll be a fair amount of layering in this album. And that's because they have so many yummy embellishment pieces to work with. Tons of flowers and ephemera, as well as die cuts, you name it, they have it. So this has been a real fun collection to work with. Okay, so that's it. So page 1 is just a simple right hand flap, and that's 4 3/4 by 8 and score at 1/2 inch. Okay, so page 2. Here we go. So here are my page 2 elements. So page 2 is going to be relatively simple too. I'm going to put a simple pocket on this side, and then I've got 2 flaps that go on this side. I'm going to lay down my pocket. I chose not to do flanges because I want my pocket to be tight. I'm going to put tape around 3 of the 4 edges, and I'm not going to take the side tape off until I'm actually ready to lay down the base mat so it'll slip behind the pocket. And in just a minute, you'll see what I mean. Okay, there we go. All right. As you can see, the lighting just changed. The weather's changing here. I think it's going to rain tonight, so I might be doing some of this under artificial lighting. I hope not, but you never know. Okay, so I've only removed the bottom strip, so I'm going to adhere this directly to this page, but just the bottom part. I'll pull these 2 tabs off once I slide in the mat that goes on this page. So I'm going to use my contrast sheet. Help you see what I'm doing. And I should have dry fit this, so I'm going to flip it over so it doesn't grab before I'm ready. And I actually need to trim just a sliver off, and I'll do that right now. This should be enough, but I'll find out in just a second. So if you ever take your backing off before you're ready, all you do is turn your paper over so that you've got the side that's clean to dry fit against. And that did the trick. So now I'm ready to lay it down. So I'm just looking to stay on the page, not slip into the hinge area. and then come across. Actually, I said that was it, but I think I am going to take off just a little bit more on the opposite side so it doesn't hang over. So I had trimmed this pocket piece to 8 by 3. 8 by 3 is the size, but the pocket page is actually a little bit shy of 8, so I just went ahead and trimmed that excess off. The cut list will say 8 by 3, but you may have to trim just a tiny bit so that it doesn't hang over. When I say hang over, I mean the edge of the page here. And once it's flush, you can just push toward the spine. There we go. Now that fits perfect. Okay, so again, we'll take those two pieces off when we're ready to decorate this page. So that's page 2. That was pretty fast. Okay, on to page 3. So I have 2 flaps, and these flaps are the same size. They're 6.5 by 5.5. 6.5 by 5.5. 6.5 by 5.5. And I'm just going to have these flap up and down across each other, just like so. Okay. These are pretty easy to lay down because you don't have to worry about it being too wider than the page. I like to come in a minimum of a 1/2 inch, but I do eyeball it. But if you don't feel good about that, you might want to use your 1/2 inch marker. Or put a little tick mark with a ruler. Okay, that's it. That's in. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stay a 1/2 inch away from the spine and lay this down in the opposite direction. And as usual, I'm going to turn my book over because I like to be close to the edge that I'm laying down. I'm going to go ahead and use this as my little marker for where my 1/2 inch is, roughly. Close enough. Okay, and now I'm just trying to stay as flush to the top of the page as possible. So that's in. So that is page 3. 1, 2, 3. So again, the pocket is 3 by 8 and then trim down. You might have to take a sliver off just to make sure it's not overlapping. And these are 6.5 by 5.5. 6.5 by 5.5. Score it 1/2 inch for both. Okay. Once I lay all my flaps down, I'll come back and decide whether I'm using ribbon or magnets to hold things down. Okay, now here we are in the center of the book. And I always like everything to open away from the center in the middle of the book. So I'm going to have a left and right flap on these 2 pages. And all the flaps are standard size. It is 4 3/4 by 8. 4 3/4 by 8, score it 1/2 inch. And you'll need 2 of those, one for 4 and one for 5. I'm going to turn it around, get these edges next to me, put down my contrast sheet, and I'm going as close and flush to this as I can. Got a little piece of tape hanging off. Got that off. Okay, there we go. All right. Very straightforward. And as I said, I will come back. Oops, it stuck to me and not the paper. I will come back and decide how I'm going to keep these flaps closed in the next step. Right now, we'll just get all this loose paper laid down. Okay, I'm going to rotate it around and do the other side. Get my contrast in there. And you don't have to use contrast. I like it because it's really hard for me to see all the edges when you're using a single color cardstock, whether it's black or white. Takes a minute to stick it in, but I actually think it helps me go faster in laying the panel down. Up to you, up to you. Okay, so here we are. So there's 4 and 5, and they open out like this. And there'll be some additional mechanisms, but they're actually going to get attached to the mat. Okay, now on to the next one, and this is going to be a mirror of page 2 and 3. I was gonna say if I can find the papers, here they are. So you'll need 2 of these. This is 6.5 by 5.5, 6.5 scored 1/2 inch by 5.5. Okay, you'll need 2 of those. Let's see, which side does it go on? It goes on this side, so they're gonna go like this, and then the pocket's gonna go here. I'm gonna go ahead and lay the pocket down first. And I'm gonna do the same thing where I'm only gonna remove the tape from the bottom and leave the sides intact until I'm ready with the mat. And before I put my side tape on, this time I'm gonna dry fit it and see if I need to trim it a little. And it looks like just a tiny smidge. When I say smidge, it's less than 1/8 of an inch. It's very little. But I don't like it hanging into the hinge, and I don't like it hanging off the page. You're just asking for it to get caught on something. One more time. I'd rather cut a little and do twice than cut too much and have to use a new piece. Okay. Let's see how we did. Yes, right on. Okay. I'm going to take this tape off and lay this down. And I'm, as usual, like to get to the corner as close to me as possible and then get some contrast in there to help me see it. Okay, that's in. Oops, I forgot to put the side tape on. I can still do that. It'll just be a little bit harder. Don't do what I did. Put the tape on first. There we go. I feel like it's been forever since I've done a video. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. So we'll have this video up and running, and then Christine, I'm not sure if I'm going to beat her to the punch or not. But she's working on Proper Gentleman, and that's coming out. If it hasn't come out already, it's right around the corner. Okay, same thing. We're going to move these away from the edges a 1/2 inch and lay them on the top and bottom. And I'm not looking for perfection, I'm looking for an estimate. Okay. There we go. I'm going to flip it over and apply the top one where I can see it. Oops, sorry, I dropped my tool. There you go. For those of you that don't know, this is an Omni Grid. You find it in the fabric section, and it's got some markings on it. And I haven't actually ever measured it. All I know is I pick a line and then I use that line over and over again. I think they're 1/4 inch, but I'm really not sure. And I do believe this main line is a 1/2 inch. And it turns out to be a pretty useful tool when you're validating that you've got something in straight. It's very easy to run along the edge and make sure that it doesn't change the measurement as you go. If it does, that means you've either got crooked, your paper's not square, or you didn't lay it down square. I find it to be very, very useful. And then the piece on top is just one of those pop dots that you put on the back of a cell phone, and I like it just because it makes it easier for me to pick it up rather than when it's flat. So that is your tool tip for the day. Okay, so that was 6 and 7, and now we're on our last page, which is page 8. And page 8 is a very simple, just like page 1, single flap that opens away from the spine. And it is 4 3/4 by 8. 4 3/4 by 8, score at 1/2 inch. Four and 3/4 by 8. All right, here we go. And the paper that I'm using is 65-pound Neenah white cardstock. Neenah, N-E-E-N-A-H cardstock. And I get this at Walmart, and it's a real bargain. It's not in the craft section. You'll have to look for it over by the office supplies. You'll find it over there. I get their black and white, and I wish they had a cream cardstock. I'd buy that too. But that's really the 2 colors that they have. That's what I'm using today. And then I'm testing this strip right here, which is bookbinding tape. I recently did one in black, and this is my first white one. And I'm testing a couple of different things. I've been unhappy with the lifespan of my spines because they crack over time. So I'm looking to find a good product that holds up, is easy to use, and can match most of the projects I work on. And when I find something that I feel comfortable with giving a recommendation on, I'll let you guys know. But just so you know, for this, this is, and I'm hoping to actually carry it in our shop when I find one that I trust. This is from Line Co. It's a, they make boxes and book covers. So it's actually a bookbinding tape. And I like this one because it came paperback, which made it very easy to lay down, kind of like double-faced tape. So it doesn't go down until you peel the backing off. The black one is tape on tape, and it unrolls a lot like duct tape. So it kind of stretches as you're unrolling it. So I wasn't crazy about that, but most of it gets covered up anyway. Okay, so that is our first video for the 8.5 by 8.5 Prima Pretty Pale 8.5 by 8.5 mini album. I'll be back to start adding the embellishments and the pattern papers in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.